Welcome back in, everybody. Rob Ellis, Bill Collarule, hanging out with you on this Tuesday. Bill's in the helm, I think, tomorrow as well. So we're hanging out. He's in for Tone, who's in for Gunner. We got a lot of depth here, Bill. Speaking of that, here's the question that I have for you. We haven't heard anything on Zach Ertz, and we haven't had a chance to discuss it. I say the more the merrier. I don't think it can hurt. The other, as good as Dallas Goedert is, he has trouble staying on the field. I don't like the drop-off with what it is with Stoll and Alberto and, Calcaterra, whatever, who don't even get targets. If I could bring him in, I would bring him in. I don't know that that's going to happen. He may have more of an opportunity in Baltimore, and I wouldn't blame him if he went there. What do you think about Ertz?
I'd bring him in as well, simply from, like you said, a depth perspective. He's going to be great for the locker room, great culture guy. He's got experience with Dallas Goedert. But everyone would have to ease their expectations. He's not the same guy he was when he was here. And when he was in Philadelphia, he was averaging over 10 yards a carry almost every single season. In 2017, the Super Bowl year, he averaged over 11 yards per catch. This year so far in Arizona, he was only averaging 6.9 yards per reception. So major drop-off for him. He's not the same guy, but hey, if we need a big catch in a big moment, and they go to Zach Ertz, I'm still confident he's bringing it down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I view it the same way as I do with Shaq Leonard. Like, he's probably an upgrade from what you have at that spot. Certainly, Zach isn't an upgrade from Goddard, but he's an upgrade from what's behind Goddard. So if I can bring that in, and he's going to get me 2 catches in a game where I need 6, and he gets me 7 for a first down, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. And he's not costing you an arm and a leg.
Exactly. I was going to say that. Exactly the same thing with Shaq Leonard. It didn't cost you anything in terms of assets to bring him in. You're just talking about money. And if it's not a lot and you could fit him under the cap and all that, which I'm sure they can with Howie Roseman, why not? It doesn't hurt you in any way by bringing him in. So I'm all for if they brought Zach Ertz back. And what does he need? 14 catches to be the franchise leader? Is that what it is?
I think that's the number. I don't know off the top of my head, but that would be pretty cool too. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Again, would I blame him with Mark Andrews out likely for the season? Baltimore makes a lot of sense for him. So if he ended up going there, I get it. I don't think anybody would blame him if that's the case. Speaking of blame, slow starts 5 straight games, trailed at the half 5 straight games, dodging kind of bullets. They scored 20 points in the first half the last 3 games. How much of that does Sirianni have to wear? We talked a lot about Brian Johnson, but how much of that is Sirianni wearing? Because he is in charge of this offense as well in terms of scheming, game plan, et cetera.
I think Sirianni's a great coach, and I've been on my soapbox about this for a while, that I don't like that he doesn't get the same respect nationally as some of these other coaches do.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think a lot of the blame for how this offense has started is on Nick Sirianni. He's definitely got his hands all over that game plan. And what you've seen in the second half of games a lot of the times over the last couple of weeks is that offense come to life, which I give a lot of credit to Brian Johnson because he's the one who's calling those plays. So I think at least going into these games, you got to put a lot of the blame on Sirianni. It's a shared effort. I'm going 50-50 to start these games, but Sirianni's in all those meetings. He's an offensive coach. This is his offense, his game plan that he comes up with Brian Johnson. So Sirianni's got to share the blame for sure on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's, the thing we don't know the dynamic, and I don't think Nick or, Bigfoot's Brian Johnson. So I do think he's calling the majority of the offensive plays, but he has input. If he's seeing something he doesn't like, for example, Nick said yesterday, hey, we have to do a better job incorporating the run game and staying true to it, whatever, something to that effect. Well, man, if you're seeing this trending in the wrong direction, one of the reasons you took a step back from play calling was so you could big picture things. And if you're seeing we're becoming too predictive, we're not utilizing this guy who's been really good for us all season, DeAndre Swift, we've got to change things up a little bit. Isn't that where you get in Brian Johnson's ear? Or at halftime say, hey, dude, we got to start mixing the run game in a little bit more. Like, where are you with that?
And the first few plays of the game are scripted plays. Look at the Buffalo Bills game. They came out and they dropped back 3 straight times. So Sirianni obviously signed off on that, saying, hey, yeah, let's come out and throw the ball 3 times in a row instead of getting DeAndre Swift involved. And Look, I get angry sometimes that we do complain about play calling and coaching, but in this one, it's just so obvious. It's right in front of you that when they've committed to the run and they've committed to giving the ball to DeAndre Swift, good things happen. Buffalo Bills game, come out to start the game, 3 straight passes, only put up 7 points in the first half. Come out in the second half. They give the ball to Swift. What happens? He breaks off a 30-yard run, sparks the whole offense for the second half. It's not rocket science to be a little bit more balanced. So, hey, he admitted it at the press conference, but let's just hope it's not lip service and they actually do it on the field.
The other thing that it appears, and maybe some of this was great coverage by the Niners, maybe some of this is on Jalen. There's somebody there where he could pull the trigger and connect with. It certainly could be the case. I haven't looked at the all 22 yet, which gives you more of an idea of this. I watched the game tape last night, the Fox broadcast of it. But it feels like the offensive passing plays are very slow developing. And it's just boom, ba boom, ba boom. And then we're going to maybe take a deep shot or whatever. Early, there were a couple of slants to AJ, which really worked. And then again, this could be the 49ers making adjustments and taking that away. But it feels like generally, in my opinion, there's too many offensive passing plays that are slow, too long developing.
Yeah, the all 22 just got released, and I'm looking forward to watching it as well, because when I'm watching that game on the TV broadcast, what it appeared to me was not only were the routes slow developing, they didn't have the proper route designs to beat the zoned coverage. And that's why you saw Jalen Hurts, when he was dropping back, immediately leaving his spot and exiting the pocket, not because there was a lot of pressure. I thought the offensive line did a great job. It just didn't appear, at least from watching it on the TV, that guys were open because they didn't have the proper plays called or route designs to beat the zone that the 49ers were running. And yeah, the all 22 just became available. I want to see it, because if guys were open and Jalen Hurts was just missing them, I'm going to be shocked, because it didn't look like he had any opportunity to get the ball down the field, at least on the TV broadcast.
You know, I thought he was okay. I thought he was okay in the game. I didn't think he played his best game, without question. I thought there were a couple times where he held the ball too long. And again, we'll both have a better handle after we look at the all 22 on if there were guys that were missed. But I thought he was just okay. Now, it's kind of what San Fran does to most teams. You know, you always have to take that to it. They weren't playing some scrub team where you should have been lighting them on fire. I get it. But if you're an MVP candidate, you got to do better than what Jalen did. I thought he was in the game.
Well, one of the inexcusable plays for me was taking that big sack in the red zone, because we could go back, and I don't know if it would have changed the outcome necessarily with how bad that defense got beat, but 2 big drives to start the game and sputtering in the red zone, 14-0 would have been a huge difference compared to 6-0 in that football game. And that sack was on Jalen Hurts. You cannot take a sack like that in the red zone that almost guaranteed you're not going to be able to convert a touchdown. So I put that one on Jalen Hurts. That was a big play in that football game that I don't know if it would have changed the outcome, but certainly would have given them a better shot if they go up 14-0 instead of 6.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, the 2 number 1 receivers, I call them, but the 2 starting receivers had good games. I thought A.J. Brown and Devontae had pretty solid games. There just wasn't a lot else from anybody. I mean, Swift didn't get chances like we talked about. Quez, what do you have? A couple of catches. He was back involved a little bit. I mean, not much. The depth drops off big time. You have no backup tight end who's capable of giving you anything in the offensive game in terms of catching passes. Zacchaeus, yes, he had the big catch against the Bills, but that was more of a brilliant Jalen play than it was anything else. They do lack some depth there, this team.
You and I have talked about it before. I'm not a huge fan of Quez Watkins. I know you're not a huge fan of Quez Watkins either. He did have a couple of catches in that game, but it's plays like the one where Jalen Hurts underthrows the deep ball to Quez. And it would have been a tough catch. I'm not saying Quez should have caught that ball, but I do think a better wide receiver, there's a pass interference on that play. When you underthrow a deep ball and you have the defensive back beaten the way Quez Watkins had him beat, you fight back towards the football and you're going to get the flag. You're going to get it. And you just don't see big plays like that from Quez Watkins. A couple catches, but we talked about it last week. Olamide Zacchaeus having that big touchdown in the Bills game. Quez doesn't make that play. He
No.
doesn't. And that is a huge drop-off. And when you're out a guy like Dallas Goedert, it's a problem. But look, even with the drop-off to the wide receiver 3, the offense is talented enough that they should not be getting shut down like they've been shut down in the first half of the last 3 games.
Yeah.
They're too talented. Jalen Hurts is too good. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, nobody can guard them. So the fact that this offensive staff hasn't been able to figure out how to start quicker is alarming. But unlike the defense, where you look at these numbers and they're in the bottom of the league, I'm still okay with this offensive coaching staff. I still think they can get the job done because you've seen, although Brian Johnson has made some head-scratching play calls at times, he's also made some really good play calls at times as well. And you don't go 12 straight touchdowns in the red zone with bad play calling. They were doing a really good job.
They made a massive adjustment there because that was a struggle early. Yeah.
And it was, you got to give them credit. So as much as we love to complain, you do have to give them credit. They got a lot better in the red zone. That was really good job by Brian Johnson and the offensive coaching staff. But just get DeAndre Swift a little bit more involved. I think it'll go a long way. And every time we talk about the running game, Rob, I'm sure you get it here on this show. I get it on my show constantly. There's at least 5 comments about Rashad Penny in the chat. Everybody wants to see Rashad Penny. And I've been saying this since like week 3. I really think we just need to give up on the hopes that Rashad Penny is going to contribute to this football team. They clearly have no trust that he's anywhere near the guy he was in Seattle.
I'm with you. Like there are things that we don't get the opportunity, and this is going to lead into where I'm going with you next. But there are things that we don't get an opportunity to see in practice that they do. Now, the counter to that from a fan could be, well, why'd you sign this guy? Why is he still here? Why isn't there somebody on the roster who can help? Right. And that's totally valid. But he must not be able to play, man. And he must be here just for depth purposes if somebody goes down.
I mean, look, the guy, when he was healthy, was putting up numbers that were like unheard of. I think he was averaging, 5.9 yards per carry? Something crazy. But just injuries after injury after injury have probably taken their toll. But I'm with you. If he's not going to contribute, I wanted to see at the trade deadline, I was calling for, I would have liked to have seen the Eagles bring in a bigger back to go with Swift and Scott and Gainwell, because all 3 of those guys are relatively the same size back. And if Rashad Penny, who is a big back, wasn't going to be able to get even activated on game day, well, bring in a guy who can contribute. But hey, if you're not running the ball, I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah. The argument then is, well, if Swift gets 6 attempts, well, who cares? But I got you. So that leads to 2 names that frankly, I thought about them this week because of some of the defensive struggles, but I haven't thought about them a lot this year. Nolan Smith and Kelee Ringo. Now, Ringo may be more of a stretch considering he was taken a little bit later and there's development and all that. But I thought you get a little bit more out of Nolan Smith. And, by snaps, by productivity, it ain't much. And it may be one of these deals where they're seeing him in practice every day and he's not ready to take on that kind of responsibility. If that's the case, that's a bummer for a guy who was taken as high as he was.
I'm definitely disappointed in Nolan Smith. And with Kelee Ringo, I agree with you. I thought they drafted him more as a project. He's still very young, 21 years old, has all of the size and potential to be a shutdown corner in this league. But I don't think they drafted him with the expectations that he was going to contribute this year. He doesn't get any snaps on defense, straight special teamer. But I'm not ready to rule out Kelee Ringo, 4th round. They did give up a 3rd round to move up and get him, so they obviously liked him. But I don't think, from everything I heard, that they thought he was going to contribute this year.
No.
But Nolan Smith, very alarming. 1st-round draft pick at a position where you've seen young guys able to come into this league and contribute by getting pressure on the quarterback. And in this game against the 49ers, 11 snaps. You haven't really seen his snaps increase drastically since they let Derek Barnett go. That's what everyone's hope was. Okay, Nolan Smith's going to get a lot more reps now because they're letting Barnett go. I mean, the fact that Brandon Graham is still getting more than double the amount of snaps of Nolan Smith, who you used a 1st-round draft pick on, is concerning. Not ready to rule him out. We've seen guys get speaking of Brandon Graham, blossom a little bit later in their careers. But
Sure.
it is concerning to me because I was so high on Nolan Smith, so high on him. I wanted to see the Eagles, if they didn't get Jalen Carter at 10, I said, I'd like to see them take Nolan Smith at 10. Thankfully, they were able to move up, get Carter, and still get Nolan Smith all the way down at 30. But maybe now you're starting to see why he fell all the way to number 30, which we all thought was a steal at the time.
Right, exactly. And again, look, you do want to have patience. You want to just let let some guys marinate a little bit. But I'll tell you this too. They're big boys, and I consider the big boys Reddick, Sweat, namely. Throw BG in there as well. Carter, Davis, Cox. They got to start being more disruptive. They've got to get home more. Like the sack number is okay. Like I said, they're 8th. It's fine. It's not terrible by any stretch, but they need to be more disruptive. And the other part is, and that this goes hand in hand with the fact that they're 19th in takeaways. You got to put some more heat on these quarterbacks, man, and force them into mistakes. You got to be able to take the ball away a little bit more on the back end. You got to be able to get a strip. When was the last time we saw them strip somebody? I can't even remember.
Well, it would have been Bradley Roby on Travis Kelce in that Chiefs game, which was a huge play.
It was.
The ball out.
Yeah, you're right. But there hasn't been a ton of that this year, unfortunately.
Well, here's something that's concerning when you talk about Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat and wanting them to contribute more. My concern is how much these guys are going to wear down because they're playing a lot of snaps. I just pulled up the snap counts on the season. Josh Sweat has played close to 77% of the defensive snaps. Hassan Reddick close to 76% of the defensive snaps. And I want to see what they did last season. Last season, Hassan Reddick played 73%, so he was up there, but Josh Sweat only played 53% of the snaps. So you've seen Sweat go from 53% all the way up to 75%. And you know the Eagles, by having a deep defensive line, want to be able to rotate these guys through. So it's even more alarming that Nolan Smith can't get on the field when you got a guy like Josh Sweat playing that many snaps in a 17-game season. I just hope these guys don't start to wear down.
I did want to mention this too, but we'll get back into the analysis here. But congratulations to Lane Johnson. He's the Eagles nominee for the nationwide Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Each team nominates a player for that. He's done a ton in terms of mental health. I saw him even tweeting stuff out yesterday, talking about anxiety, and he's made it a point to really, try to help folks with that. So good for him. Anyway, but a guy who's great on the field and has been, a big time influence off the field, trying to help folks, Lane Johnson.
And definitely congratulations to Lane Johnson doing a lot. And man, the one positive when you look at that 49ers game, did you see Lane Johnson battling with Nick Bosa? I mean, this is a guy who Lane Johnson missed last week because of a groin injury, and just so athletic. To see guys that big, that was a cool battle to watch. And Lane Johnson pretty much shut him down.
Yeah, I was watching Brian Baldinger. If you don't follow him on Twitter, is a great follow. He does these Baldy's breakdowns, and he was doing some of the one-on-one stuff with those two, isolated on an island. Lane gets no help, man. It's just like, all right, you deal with Bosa, and Bosa didn't get a sack in the game. He's look. I don't think it's even close. Now people may hold the PED thing against them, but I think he and Kelce should be absolute locks for the Hall of Fame. Locks.
1,000%. I'm glad you mentioned the Hall of Fame. I had Seth Joyner on last night. I asked Seth about Eric Allen. Said, hey, one of your teammates nominated again for the Hall of Fame. What do you think? He said it's long overdue for Eric Allen to make the Hall of Fame. But he's not the first person to come out and say that. So let's hope Eric Allen finally gets his due and gets put into the National Football League Hall of Fame.
I've never gotten that one, Bill. I mean, his interception numbers are there. His interception return numbers are there. His all the stuff that PFF does now. Like if you look at his breakdowns, he was a great corner. He was great, and he played a long time, had really good longevity. It's not like he was some hidden secret just here in Philadelphia. He played elsewhere and was really good.
And no controversies. Good dude. Nothing. Everybody seems to have liked him. I don't understand it. Sometimes I think people just fall through the cracks, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think he's an example of it. And hopefully he'll get his recognition for sure. All right. So a couple other things that I wanted to hit here from what's happening with them. There are certain players who I think we had high expectations for, who in some cases have been okay, and other cases have let them down. You go to the offensive side of the ball. Do you think and I'm going to go back to the offensive line. Do you think they're run blocking the way that we anticipated they would, or do you think this is just not giving the running backs enough touches?
I think it's a little bit of a combination, but it is so hard because we've talked about this before, that the running game is not something that usually can just turn on and say, okay, we haven't ran the ball all day, but now we're going to try to run the football. You really have to establish it, and they don't allow, in addition to the running backs, they don't allow the offensive line to get into any sort of rhythm with the run blocking. But that didn't seem to hurt them last year. Last year, it didn't matter. Whenever they wanted to turn on the running game, they could just flip that switch, and the running game just dominated everybody. So we've seen a little bit of a drop-off. But again, a little hard to say because Cam Jurgens was out for a few weeks in the middle there, and you saw the yards per carry really take a dip. But I was surprised when I went and looked at the Pro Football Focus numbers. Jason Kelce had a really bad grade in the running game against the San Francisco 49ers.
I thought the guards had some rough grades too.
So I
thought Dickerson and Jurgens had some rough grades too.
Here, I'll pull it up for us. So we had, I'm just pulling it up now, but I remember being a little bit surprised by it.
I am surprised by Kelce again. That it's tough sometimes.
So just run blocking.
Broadcast. Yeah.
Jason Kelce was the lowest graded offensive line according to PFF in run blocking. They gave him a 40.1 grade.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, Lane Johnson had a 68, was the highest graded. So that was alarming to me. And especially because he's going up against a guy that all of us love to say, oh, he's not good against the run. And that was Javon Hargrave.
Right.
So pretty alarming for Jason Kelce, because that's out of character for him. He's done a good job all season long.
Surprised by that.
Run blocking. I mean, on the year, Jason Kelce's run blocking grade has been an 82.7.
So he was like almost more than half dipped.
According to PFF, which is alarming.
That's surprising. Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing too. When you get universally beat like they did, they got beat up front. I think on both sides of the ball. Obviously, when you lose 42-19, period, you get whipped. That badly. It's pretty obvious. I said this to Tone yesterday. Sometimes when you win, the warts get covered up. And when you lose, I think it can really serve as a real wake-up call where you take a step back and you say, all right, guys, we have to fix this. We can't continue. This is not the way to keep going. And that's what I hope this game serves as, because you didn't you weren't in some battle. It wasn't some bad luck that happened. There wasn't a field issue. You got smoked. And when that happens, sometimes you got to regroup and reassess, what's happening.
We're going to learn a lot about this team. We love to talk about how great this team has been under Sirianni and with Jalen Hurts at quarterback at responding to adversity. But they've never been beaten like this. So now we'll see, how do they respond? And they have a great opportunity in front of them to shut a lot of people up and dominate the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry World on Sunday night. Won't be easy,
no.
But if they can bounce back with a big win, you'll see a lot of people. And I just talk about the Cowboys for a second. It's just,
yes.
You mentioned earlier, they barely beat, maybe this was Farzi. You guys are running together in my brain now, but they barely beat the Seattle Seahawks.
Yes, they did.
That was the only team that they've beaten who had a winning record when they played them. And now the Seattle Seahawks are 6-6. So they've not beaten anybody that currently has a winning record. But I just love the national media now. Dak Prescott, been disrespected for so long. This Dallas Cowboys team, they're a good team. But, man, does the national media love to hype them up as soon as they win a game.
Yeah, they're a great front-running team. They do that particularly well. They can beat bad teams. They will smoke bad teams like it's nobody's business. You look at their wins. All right. They've beaten the Giants, the Jets. I'm just going chronologically here. Giants, Jets, New England, Chargers, Rams, Giants again, Carolina, Washington, and Seattle. You're right. Not one of those teams is over 500. So how does that bode for the stretch here where they face the Eagles? I think is Buffalo still 6-6? I think that's what they are. Eagles, Buffalo, Miami. So at least of the 1, 2, 3 of the 5 teams that they have left, 4 either are at 500 or above 500. So the notion that Dallas runs the table is, yeah, let's wait and see on that one. I'm much more concerned about San Francisco running the table than I am Dallas. Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah, they don't impress me. I do think they have a decent team, but we saw what they've done against some bad teams. And I see some of our Cowboys trolls in the chat not happy with me that we're just speaking the truth. We haven't said anything that wasn't true. They haven't beaten a single team that currently has a winning record.
Yeah.
But
and look, they're good. They're good. Nobody's arguing that. Like we said earlier, I mean, they're the number 1 offensive scoring team, and they're the number 4 points allowed. That's a good. They're 32.3 points per game that they score, and they only give up 18.3. I mean, that's good. But we'll see when the competition ratchets up to close out the season like it's going to do.
You just reminded me, Rob, because you talked about one of the teams that they beat, and the Eagles beat them as well, the New England Patriots. How bad have things gotten in New England? Did you see they're the first team, I think, I don't know how long back it goes, but to hold a team to under 10 points and still lose every game.
Yeah, 6-0 was the final last week. Yeah.
And they've lost like 3. Well, let me see what it was, because they lost 3 straight games, New England. They lost 6-0.
Yep.
10-7 and 10-6 are their last 3 losses. So that defense has held teams to 10 points or less 3 straight games, and they've lost all 3. You think Belichick's back next year?
I don't. I've been on it for a while. I don't. I know he just signed an extension I guess before this season. But I think there will be a mutual parting of the ways where it'll be spun like it was just better for both sides. Bill's been incredible, but we understand he wants to, maybe tackle some new horizons, and, we're ready for a fresh voice. Wish him nothing but the best. Every kissy and huggy and bye-bye and all that good stuff. Like, I think that's where it goes. I don't think he's back. I do not. Tone disagree. I think Tone is on. He's going to be back. I don't think so.
If I'm Robert Kraft, I'm pulling Belichick aside and saying, listen, man, you've earned the right to go out on your own terms. So that's why I'm telling you, why don't you step down? Because I don't think that you should fire a Bill Belichick with everything that he's done. But I do think it's time for him to move on. And I think you started to see it last year when they tried that whole experiment with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia as the offensive coordinator. It was similar to what we saw with Andy Reid. As great as Andy Reid is as a coach, and I think he's one of the greatest to ever do it, if you remember his last year or one of his last years here in Philadelphia, they decided to make Juan Castillo,
correct,
the offensive line coach, the D coordinator. And everyone's like, what the hell are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And that started to kind of be the cracks in the foundation, and then it was time for him to move on. And look, he's had great success in Kansas City, but I do think his time had come here in Philly. And you're starting to see some of that stuff from Bill Belichick saying, like, what are you doing, man?
You are. And I know it bothers him down deep that everybody's going to say, see, it was more Brady than him. I know that's going to tick him off. I know it, but hard to argue. Brady covered up a lot of flaws. He really did. And the Bills' biggest problem isn't necessarily Bill the coach. It's Bill the player personnel man.
Yeah.
I don't think he recognizes talent coming out of the college ranks well enough, and especially on the offensive side. And he's trying to get away with not having great talent on the outside at wide receiver, which you could get away with to an extent with Brady. You can't with these other guys.
And you mentioned Tom Brady, and not only did he cover some stuff up on the field, I think the intangibles, because we talk about the intangibles a lot with Jalen Hurts. Tom Brady was one of the best leaders we've ever seen in this sport.
No doubt.
And I think that whole Patriot way worked because your leader on that team was Tom Brady leading the way. When you remove him from the equation, the Patriot way becomes a little bit more difficult with some of these younger guys.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. I mean, a combo of greatness and just an innate ability to lead. It's amazing what Brady did for as long as he did. All right, let's get a quickie in here, and we will come back, kind of jump around. We got our NFL segment coming up at the top of the hour, and then when we come back, we'll mix in some Flyers. I know you love the Fly guys, taking care of business against the Penguanos And we'll mix in some Sixers and some Phillies as well, because the Phillies handed out a little extension, which we didn't get a chance to get into. We will do that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. He's Bill Colarulo. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Time for me to tell you about Pro Action Restoration. Yes, Pro Action Restoration is the place that you turn to if your home, your business experiences the pain, the inconvenience of water, fire, smoke, mold damage. I experienced the pain of water damage, and I have big giant holes in my ceilings and my wall to prove it. And the great folks at Pro Action Restoration fixed the problem. They're actually coming out here next week, early next week, to begin work on my house. And again, the beauty is Pro Action Restoration is licensed, bonded, fully insured. They've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. And I can tell you from personal experience, Pro Action Restoration works in conjunction with your insurance company. So again, if it's water, fire, smoke, mold damage, you name it, they can handle it. Give them a call. 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or you can reach out online, proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.